I'd like to call the regular board meeting of the Board of Education of Community Unit District 201 today, Tuesday, May 11th, 2010. If we could all stand, please. I'm sorry. Roll call. Sorry.
Ms. Casey?
Here.
Mr. Charleston?
Here.
Mrs. Charlton? Ms. Kelly? Here. Mrs. Lubeck?
Here.
Mr. Price?
Here.
Mrs. Thomas?
Here. Thank you. Now if we could all stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Where do you go? We had no flag. They have no flag? That way, correct. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
I'd like to start with the student recognition.
Ms. Mulby?
I'd like to ask Ben Ledwin to come on up. There he is. The elementary schools have a math contest that is done throughout the year. It's sponsored by the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics, and the contest runs throughout the year. It's given 3 times. There are group contests and individual contests, and the young people that you see before you are the winners of the individual contests, where the children, it's the highest average of all of the contests throughout the entire year. And I'd like to introduce to you our 4th grade winner, Ben Ledwin. And our 5th grade winner from Manning School, Natalia Wright.
We also hold this math contest at Miller School, so I'd like to congratulate our 2 winners. Our 4th grade winner this year is Liam Slaga from 4th grade, and our 5th grade winner is Diana Turan. At Miller School, we also we do our annual spelling bee. Our spelling bee was recreated. It's an old-fashioned spelling bee. It started in 1976, and our building has done it ever since then in 1976. So this year, we have a 3rd grade winner, a 4th grade winner, and a 5th grade winner, and I'd like them all to come on up to the stage. Our 3rd grade winner is Molly Johnson. Our 4th grade winner is Rhiannon Kosiniak. And our 5th grade winner is Grace Yang.
Good evening. Every year, the Illinois Principals Association has a breakfast for the highest class in DuPage County schools. At this time, they recognize students in our school. It's the 8th grade. Students who, for us, really we can identify with respectful, responsible behavior and are successful in the class. These 2 students are a pleasure not only to have in class, but also in school. They're involved, They really, I think, epitomize what we mean by following the Panther path, and it's a pleasure to have them as students, and I know that Mr. Carr will enjoy them as they move on to high school. So this year we have 2 recipients. If they could come up, please, Morgan Goliath and Jack Gordon. Thank you. Thank you.
Well, every May for the last 8 years, it's been my privilege and pleasure to recognize our valedictorian and salutatorian for the graduating class that year. Today, we're going to recognize our valedictorian and salutatorian, so I'm going to ask our valedictorian this year, Erica McCracken, to please join me on stage. Erica McCracken. And humor me for a second. I'm going to speak of Erica and some of the things that she's done and some of the things she plans to do. As the valedictorian this year, Erica and I have had a chance to speak to some of her future goals and expectations. She's going to Drake University next year. She's planning to major in business and pursue a career either in business or law, possibly accounting. Her accomplishments while she was here: she was an Illinois State Scholar for 09-10. She was in the National Honor Society. She was selected by our staff and peers as the Student of the Month for December. She's in the Spanish National Honor Society. In band, she was a drum major and first chair saxophonist. She was in the jazz band as well. She was SAD president and Rotary Interact treasurer. She was on the Scholastic Bowl team, in the Geography Club, and participated in Operation Snowball. She has been granted the Presidential Scholarship and Alumni Scholarships from Drake University. After she graduates and before she attends school next year, she plans to travel with her friends, which makes a lot of sense. You don't get to do that often. Her fondest high school memories of Westmont High School, however, experience in Mr. Landreth's AP Geography class and of going to state with the track team. Have to imagine that Scott and Lynn McCracken are very proud of their daughter. She takes this prestigious honor as the valedictorian of 2010, Erica McCracken. And now I'd like Emma Johnson to join me on stage. Emma Johnson is our salutatorian. Emma plans on attending Marquette University in Milwaukee next year. She's planning to major in international business with a career possibilities of banking or finance. She was also an Illinois State Scholar in the National Honor Society and the Spanish Honor Society. She was the SAD treasurer and the Rotary Interact president. She was in Operation Snowball, the Geography Club, Scholastic Bowl, and was a WISE academic team state qualifier. She was a varsity volleyball and softball player. She has earned the Ignatius Scholarship and the Masonic Lodge Scholarships. She plans to travel with her family before reporting to Milwaukee, Wisconsin in the fall. She finally remembers the great times with the girls' super sectional volleyball team and traveling to China with Mr. Landreth and her father. I'm sure Keith and Mary Johnson are quite pleased. And Emma, congratulations on being the salutatorian this year. We're going to plan to take a team photo after we're done up here, so I'll see you out and back. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. We have several other students to recognize this at this meeting, but it makes sense for those coaches and sponsors who participated most directly with those students to recognize their students. So I'm going to ask Bridget Durbin to please join me on stage for the BPA National Qualifiers.
I had the pleasure last week to take two of our Westmont students, to the National Leadership Conference for Business Professionals of America. So I'm going to ask Allison and Nick to come up, please. Also, I love hearing the students' future plans to go into accounting and finance. That just sits in my heart really well. Last week, when we were at the National BPA Conference, I'd like to tell you a little bit about how these students got there. They participate in the business club called Business Professionals of America, and throughout the year, we take them to leadership conferences, and they do all kinds of competitive events and take assessments, and they compete just like the athletic program does. They do regionals and then state, and then they are able to qualify for nationals. Nick, he took first place in state in computer networking using Microsoft systems, and that's an unbelievable feat because we don't have that here at the high school. So he studies a little bit here at school independently and then does a lot of his research and networking in that field. And then Allison participated in advanced word processing, which is advanced word. She placed second in state, and then they were able to go on and compete at the national level. The national level there's about 6,500 students competing. It is sponsored by Microsoft, Shell, and the CPA Society. It provides opportunities for the students to network. I took a lot of classes, online collaboration, some accounting classes, did a lot of networking, and all of the area high schools were there, and I was really proud to be nestled in between Hinsdale and Naperville with Westmont High School students. So congratulations.
And now if I could have the girls basketball coach, Mike McCord, please join me on stage for his awards, please. Mike McCord.
If I could have Raquel Pace and Allison Berg and Sarah Sternard come up here, please. As a coach, I've been truly blessed to have these girls on my team. They all have gotten state honors in one form or another. There are 167 Class 2A schools in the state, and Raquel was in a three-point competition. Of those 167 schools, each one has 4 shooters, and those 4, so that means that Raquel, out of over 600 students, finished in the top 32 in the Illinois High School Association three-point contest. So congratulations, Raquel. And now if we take that 167 further and we multiply that by 10, which is approximately how many people are on every team, we have over 1,600 possible candidates to be All-State, and Allison Berg was one of maybe 60 girls that was named All-State, honorable mention All-State, and that's Allison. And Sarah was one of approximately 50 girls to be named third team All-State out of the once again possibility of 1,600 girls. So congratulations, Sarah. Thank you.
They're all coming back next year, right, Mike? 2? Okay. Looking forward to next year. Okay.
If I could ask, could we have another round of applause for all of our students? Thank you. I'd also like to take this time to recognize the 6 teachers who are retiring at the end of this year. So if they'd come up, and Ms. Charlton has a token of recognition for each of them. The first, Roxanne Gall. She's been a speech-language pathologist in the district for about 30 years. So, Ms. Gall. Ms. Linda Houle has been the library media specialist at Westmont Junior High School for the past 17 years. Sandy Liston has been at 33 years as a reading language arts teacher at Westmont Junior High School. Is Chris Strauss here? Is Chris Strauss here? She's on the track. Oh, she's coming late. She's still coaching. So she'll be here momentarily. She's been in the district actually for 19 years. And then Al Leineck was unable to join us tonight. He's been the school social worker at the high school and junior high for 16 years. And Sissy Punto-Willick has been a special ed teacher for 35 years at Westmont High School. So if we could all, again, have a round of applause for the teachers who are... Oh, is she there? No, I'm saving him for, actually, go ahead. I did not forget Mike. Mike is retiring, but actually Mike's an administrator in the district, so I was going to ask his wife to speak on his behalf, and she has about an hour speech to give, but instead Steve Carr asked if you could say a few words about Mr. McCord.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm a little uncomfortable with the idea of replacing Mike's wife for a moment. But as I was putting my thoughts, and Ron and I were talking about this, as I put my thoughts together, I did promise that this wouldn't be a roast, and I am going to try to play this fairly close to the vest. There will be plenty of opportunities in the next month to share some different thoughts with Mike about our experiences together, because we've had a lot of good times. I titled this in my notes, Mike McCord, 24 Glorious Years. And as I said, these are brief comments, but I mean them seriously. And then I'm going to turn it over to Ron, because I think in a moment like this, as we, in moments of reflection, I think it's important that the fun times and the serious times get shared together. Mike's been a tremendous influence on the continuing improvement of Westmont High School. He's been the architect of CUSD 201's PBIS initiative and has been fundamental in our efforts to make data-informed decisions in the best interest of our students. He thoroughly values the importance of athletics and extracurricular opportunities in a positive, complete high school experience. He's had powerful and positive interactions with our students. Our staff and students have been fortunate to have such a thoughtful and caring man as our dean and athletic director. It's really interesting for me, I've kind of been a dean before in other roles, and I had the opportunity to know my own high school dean probably better than I should have, and very rarely in my experience as a professional has nice guy and thoughtful and caring been put in the same sentence with a job description for dean, and that's all true in this Mike's case, so he's truly unique. Although summer rapidly approaches, and we're working on Mike to not think about it too much, he has a lot to do in the next few weeks. This includes the excavation of his office, and if you've been there, you know that this is going to be no easy feat. Though Mike thoroughly dislikes having to sit through and actually stand through the accolades that he's going to hear in the next few weeks, and I am trying to be conscious of that, he has to know that he's earned all of them. And as he looks back on the things that are said about him in the month of May, I hope he remembers us fondly. You're not going to see Mike wearing a tri-corner Blake Froden Sentinel hat, but he's unquestionably a super Sentinel. And Mike, I just want to give you one of many times to say thanks and best wishes. So I'm going to turn it over to Ron.
I just want to echo Mr. Carr's thoughts on this. Mike is indeed a professional who's always been involved with our students and had their best interests at heart. So Mike, we're going to miss you. And to the other professionals at Westmont Junior High School, you will be missed. So thank you for all your years of service. You made us a better place.
I would like to make an announcement, if I could. The retirees in the district many times have been given rockers or other items. I would like to take a moment to just let you know, and I hope they don't mind that I'm doing this. Roxanne Gould has donated her money to the Miller School for the purchase of Jolly Phonics Smartboard program for kindergarten. So thank you for that. Al Leineck donated his money to the outdoor ed program to benefit students who maybe couldn't afford to go there otherwise. Sissy Puntel-Wilsick and Mike McCord both donated their money to a women's shelter. Sandy Liston, Chris Strauss, and Linda Houle donated their money to purchase books for the Westmont Junior High Media Center. Thank you. Thank you all. We're going to move along with the meeting now. If the families want to stay, you certainly are welcome to. If not, you can.
They should eat the rest of that food out there.
Yeah. Okay, the first item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments this evening? But you know, before we begin, I would like to state, I want to thank Mrs. McMahon that we have now started putting the public packet online. So generally on the Monday before a board meeting, the public packet will be online. So if for those that are going to attend the meeting, you can certainly print a copy and bring it with you, and that would certainly help cut down on the cost. So I wanted to let everyone know that. Okay, so the first item on the agenda is the resignation of staff. In your orange folders, there's another a letter of resignation. The chair will entertain a motion to accept the resignation of Corinne Smith and Maureen Jones as presented.
So moved.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All opposed? So the motion's carried. The next item is an appointment of an ad hoc bargaining committee. Our board policy requires that board committees be appointed by the board president subject to board approval. And our legal counsel has advised the board members that we need to formally appoint a special committee per the designation provided in policy 2-150. So at this time, I will ask if there are two board members who would like to volunteer to be on this committee.
Myself.
And myself. Thank you, Dan. Thank you, Diane. So the chair will entertain a motion to approve the appointment of Dan Charleston and Diane Thomas to the ad hoc bargaining committee as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye. All opposed? Thank you, Dan and Diane, for that. Next item is superintendent's report.
We're hoping to have some idea about the state funding by the end of the last week as the legislature adjourned. But they did not pass a budget, so at this point in time, we really don't know much of what they're going to do. There's at least a promise that by the end of May that they will pass a budget, though obviously there's no guarantee on that. And if they don't pass a budget by the end of May, at that point then it takes a supermajority to pass a budget. So then you have 3 groups fighting instead of just the 2 that are currently fighting. The other thing about state funding you see in your orange packet is you do have a letter of commitment for the $1.2 million in capital funding board dollars from 2002. You'll also notice that that's been modified to be for Manning and Miller as opposed to Manning and South. Again, that money should be forthcoming, but doesn't have to be spent. It has to be committed in the next several years, and then we actually have 5 years to spend it after that.
So the reference to the eligible expenditures, is projects to be determined.
Correct. It has to be negotiated.
Yep.
Otherwise than that, the news that at least one of the state library systems today announced that it's effectively going to cut all but its most basic services on June 30th because one of the issues Maureen's been dealing with is the backlog of cash flow from the state, and that they haven't received, to date this year, they've received 42% of their funds. They took a 16% pay cut this year. They hadn't gotten a raise in what the state funding level was to those programs in 20 years. And they've been told not to expect any additional funds until after November. Similarly, we've been told that, the state is very interested in making their 4th categorical mandated categorical payments. The problem is the 2nd and 3rd are vouchered but haven't been paid yet. So from a soundbite, they appear to want to say that they've made the 4th payment. They're just going to make the assumption that people will assume that meant they made the first 2, or excuse me, the 2nd and 3rd. So at this point, the funding news is not particularly helpful. It was much more positive earlier last week, but that did not come to fruition. Under Race to the Top, the board needs to determine if they want to sign that memorandum this time around. The state has clarified a number of items that are in there, and at this point the WTA has, as of early this week, said they are willing excuse me, to sign that memo of understanding. So if the board would want to do that, they could make a motion to do that at the end of this meeting.
I have some questions, Dr.
Sure.
Wall. I was reading through this. I'm not clear on this Tier 1, Tier 2, and where we fit in all that. Can you explain that? Are we considered a Tier 1 or Tier 2 school?
No, my understanding, if I look at this, is that those are all tied to schools in the bottom, 10% of schools performance-wise.
You mean the Exhibit 2 stuff?
Yes, under Exhibit 2.
So Exhibit 1 applies to everyone who participates. Yes. So we would be required then.
Right.
For
Basically,
Exhibit 1, right?
since we last discussed this in January, the state legislators passed laws that the governor signed that effectively put all of these things in place in order for the Illinois application to have value, right? And so basically right now it stands that if you sign the MOU, you're going to be committed to do these things by 2014 in general. And if you don't, you're going to be required to do them by 2016. Now, the one caveat is the funding is basically tied to Title I funding. So if this district is serious about going to grade level centers, which would remove Title I status from the district, then there's no potential gain. However, if Illinois does get, is successful in its application, you would still have 90 days from that date to either create a plan or choose to not continue.
But even if we opt out, it's not, go back to what you just said. We have to comply with.
We'll have to comply 2 years later.
With 2 years later,
assuming there's no change in state law.
So, and is the purpose of this to get school districts to improve their performance?
Yes. I mean, they're really looking at a couple of things. One is, remediation of schools in the lowest quartile. They're looking at teacher evaluations being tied to student performance. So basically, a teacher is not going to be able to be rated excellent unless their students have shown, at least a year's worth of growth during the school year they're with that teacher. I mean, that's the short version of it. And then a stronger focus on math, science, and technology, or the STEMS courses. Science, technology, and math education. Okay.
And we have the WTA support.
That's what they told me. They said they're willing to sign it, the memo of understanding, so. He nods yes.
Should we take care of this now?
You could do it now, or you can do it later in the meeting if you want, whichever.
Do we know, just for discussion's sake, what other districts, specifically unit districts in the area might be? Are people, I know last time people weren't signing on to this. Do we know what other districts are doing?
Last time, about 42% of the districts in the state signed. This time around, more districts are signing on. And one of the big changes is that more of the unions have agreed to sign as well, and the state, change in statutes, which basically put all these things in place no matter what.
Do we want to vote on this tonight? Anybody have any other questions?
No, I think, when we first saw this, it was pretty vague, and now it's much more specific. And when I read through it, I was actually pleased to see that, we're doing quite a bit of what they suggest anyway. And so we could continue doing our kind of best practice. And I think we could be really proud of that. So I want to thank the staff and the administration for all the, work they've done to push things to a higher level and improve academic performance throughout the district, because I think it has taken a lot of work. And so, if the staff is willing to sign on, I see no reason why we shouldn't.
Any other comments on that? Okay.
When will we know how much money is tied to this? Will that be within that 90-day time frame?
At least in theory, we would know when if the federal government approves the state's application, we would at least have some more clear idea of how much money we would get. I don't think within 90 days we'll have an exact number.
The state still has to win, though. I mean,
Correct.
There's still a secondary step and a tertiary step.
I have to say, and I just have to voice my concern, is that I just don't want this to be an effort on the state's part for them to get money and then have districts beholden to all these regulations that they're going to be imposing upon school districts, and then school districts are not going to see any of the money, and the state is just going to keep it all. And then, like I said, school districts will now be beholden to all these new regulations that they're going to have to try to live up to with nothing good coming from it. That's my only concern.
Well, I think admittedly in the paperwork, they say that, they're not ready yet. They point to a couple different places where if the state hasn't figured this out yet, then people are not going to be obligated to follow through. So I think there's a lot to be done still before this actually happens.
Just to beg the question, was there any additional comfort from on the legal side with respect to enforceability? If there's that 90-day opt-out period, was there any additional comfort given from the standpoint of the feds?
Not really.
Okay.
I mean, the federal government is looking for 100% of school districts in a state to sign on. The two states, that got funding in the first round, both had 100% of the districts committed to be part of the program. So short of that, I think that's a definite disadvantage for the state.
Any other questions then? Do we want to vote then?
I would call a question, yeah.
Okay, then I guess the chair will entertain a motion to approve and sign the memorandum of understanding for the Race to the Top funds.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Okay, then we will sign that with the W-2.
Right. To mention Operation Prom, right before prom on May 1st, excuse me, on April 30th, working in conjunction with the police department and the fire department, the SAD organization, which is Students Against Destructive Decisions, worked to put on that event. They had a number of speakers here who spoke about the impact of drunk driving had on their personal lives. I think the kids took it for the most part very seriously, and it was very well done. Bettina Anderson did a great job organizing everything. I know at least see Deputy Chief King. I'm not sure if Chief Mulhern's still here, but take this time to thank the police department for their involvement in that program. Detective Gomorzak was involved in helping to organize that as well. You also have the one change to the handbook that wasn't made.
I didn't see it.
Should be in there.
It's on the back side of it.
On the back side?
Yeah, it's real short.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that.
No problem.
And now since I brought the objection up originally, now that I see it in writing, it's something that I can.
You can live with that?
Yes.
Good. And then a report from math consultants about a recent visit to the junior high. And then today I had the opportunity to participate at the Westmont Educational Foundation scholarship dinner, where we had 11 students who are finalists for scholarships from the Westmont Educational Foundation, and 10 of those were actually Westmont High School students. So that was a very, very nice lunch at Vincitori's, and very pleased to announce that we're going to be giving out $5,500 in scholarships this year, which is the most, at least in the last 5 years, I think the most ever. In addition to that, we've actually raised a little additional money so that there's a cushion for beginning that process next year. And Joe Maffa, who is the president of the Westmont Educational Foundation, has really worked very hard and tirelessly all year to provide that money and work hard to raise it so that a number of our seniors will get a little extra boost on their way to college next year.
I'd like to say I was at that chamber event as well, and I'd like to congratulate the students and their parents on the fine academics and the well-roundedness of the students. So congratulations. I know there's some here.
And just to report on the junior high school, had a reading night on May 6th, last Thursday at Barnes & Noble, and so far they've raised, in addition to promoting reading, they've also raised some money for the school. To my understanding, they've raised, what, about $4,200? 200. Okay. And you get 20% of that? Right. So, they're very, very well received and positive from everybody who went there. And then also the most recent Alliance legislative update, which may or may not have any value at this point in time. We'll know more in the next few weeks about the state budget. So that's all I have.
Can I just add one thing? We talked last meeting about Cashman putting together a proposal for the grade schools. And it just got me thinking about that previous proposal that they put together. Well, it wasn't a full proposal, but a description of the work for enclosing the classrooms at the high school. And I wanted to know if the board wanted to consider getting a cost for that project, because we never really got a dollar amount it would take to do that work. And as long as they're putting together a big proposal, maybe that could be added to that. So I wanted to kind of toss that out there as an idea.
You mean for the capital bond money? Because that was restricted to the two elementary schools. Or do you mean for something else?
Well, I guess I just,
to the age of the buildings and IDA
and that's
compliance.
Yeah, but the capital bond money, actually, as I read that letter, it was directed at buildings with functional age of 100 years or more. And so I don't think that our building here, the high school, would comply with that requirement. Again, if you're talking about the capital bond money, I'm not sure.
You mean this one?
Yeah.
I guess I was thinking more along the lines of the working cash.
I would be interested in that, just because it seems to be one of the top priorities from the facilities committee, and I think that would be an interesting thing, especially for the walls. It seems like that might be something that would lend itself to an academic purpose. So because we never did get numbers for that, did we?
No, you stopped that process before we got there.
Well, in fairness, I mean, it wasn't on any of the capital lists, like for immediate. No. That's beyond. That's 20 whatever.
Because if we move forward with the one of the federal, stimulus grants,
yeah,
for instance, we determined at that point that it wasn't worth it at that point in time. I mean, clearly you can go forward and do that work because of the type of work and the fact you're talking about two totally different learning environments. There's not going to be much, if any, economy of scale. So if the thought is to do it all now, so you have some economy of scale, you're not going to have any economy of scale really between those two projects.
Vis-a-vis the architecture work.
Correct.
Yeah. Personally, I'd prefer to see Mr. Cashman finish up his work on the elementary buildings, see what we got there, and then decide what to do about additional architecture work, whether it's at the senior high or other buildings at that point. Because it's a different building, it's a different project. I mean, he's clearly thought about it. He's clearly visited the building. I don't know that there's a particular pressing need to look at that in this building right now.
Well, it's just that it has come up a number of times at different points along the way. We never really got any kind of idea what it would cost, and I thought it might be an opportunity to do that. But I put the idea out there. I think it's something worthwhile looking into, but everyone else wants to wait, that's fine.
Well, it will cost money to look into
Sure.
it. And I just wonder if right now, we've been wanting to do this forever.
So it'd be good to know, what we're up against
if we ever... I don't know
ever...
how much it costs, and given that we've got these other big projects that have to be dealt with first, I wonder, not that I would like to wait, but if it makes sense to wait right now. I don't know.
But I think, just to be blatantly honest, if we look at the elementary buildings, those numbers are going to come in as very large numbers. They're going to be very large numbers. If at that point we decide we want to pursue that conversation, the only way to fund those very large numbers is going to be through a building referendum conversation. At that point, if as a board we're prepared to engage that conversation, that's the point at which we ought to circle up on other projects inside the district, so that if you're going to go to that well one time, let's fix our schools, all of them, as much as humanly possible, all one time. But let's get a sense. My opinion would be, let's get a sense for how big the numbers are at the elementary buildings, and then we can decide how far to advance that conversation at other buildings as well.
That sound to you? Do you want to?
Well, it sounds like there's not enough support to do it at this time.
So it's not that I don't think it's, like Linda was saying, that it's not something that everybody would agree would like to be done. That's kind of a cart before the horse maybe moment, where until we've got limited amount of funds, we got to find out first, and then we can spend that money to find out how much that costs a little bit later on. I think everybody would like to do it, but we got to kind of hold off a little bit, or at least I see it that way.
Here's a silly question maybe. Is it worth asking Cashman how much it might cost to give us a cost estimate? Does that make sense? I know that sounds funny, but, or do we want to hold off on that?
No, it is.
Were he just to do that, he would require to bring engineers into the building. That's what we're planning on doing next week at Manning, is to bring the engineers in just So there is cost incurred just to ask him to put together the proposal, I guess.
That's why I thought it was kind of a silly question. Okay. Joel?
Okay. I have a question about the report about the math consultants, Steve.
Yes.
What are do we have any plans looking ahead to next year to support these continuing efforts on the work that needs to be done that was kind of written up in this report, so that we could support these teachers to accomplish these things that they still need to work on? I'm a little worried about the ball being dropped, given our cuts everywhere and all that kind of stuff.
Part of that, obviously the work, for instance, in assessments has been being done in part through the CACs, and Christy Civic has been responsible for sort of overseeing that process. So in the end, if you don't have a curriculum director, then, in that particular case, Mr. Fiala is going to be asked to deal with that along with all the other things he's dealing with. And,
Are the Pippins, is their contract over with after this year? Or
they don't have a contract with us.
Are they?
Their commitment to us?
I mean, are they kind of finished with their consulting thing?
We've simply been bringing them in at this point as needed and using some of the funds we've had access to from, the RESPRO money to pay for that. So,
Pay for a large portion of their expenses out of Title I as well.
Sorry?
We pay a large portion of their expenses out of Title I as well.
Okay. All right. I mean, these are the kind of things that I worry about, because, I mean, there's kind of momentum here, and I don't want to see it stop. Just for the record.
Yes.
Chris Strauss is here.
Sure, we can do that.
We're going to take just a 2-second break from our regular scheduled, since one of the teachers just walked in. Can you come on up there?
So, Chris Strauss, Mrs. Strauss, now that you're done coaching, could you come up here so we could recognize you? It is nice to see that she's still coaching here, her last here, and you dressed up for us too. It's very nice. So how's the weather outside though?
That's fine. A little cold.
Ms. Strauss, Ms. Charlton has a little token of appreciation for you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you for all your years of service to District 201.
Thank you.
Westmont Junior High School.
Thank you.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is further discussion regarding cost containment options. First, I guess the board did approve on May 4th $529,185.75 in budget cuts, and it was sent out on a blog, so I hope everyone did see that.
Marie, I think it was only 514 when we finished. Or did that get changed again?
Is the secretary number right?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay.
$30,000.
So it's 529.
Right.
Okay.
It ties to individual people and who has insurance and who doesn't have insurance. That's the real savings to the district in that particular case.
Okay. And
one of the employees-
why did we not have that on Tuesday night?
This number, I was told, is correct.
Right, and so my question is, why did we think it was not correct on Tuesday night?
Because it didn't look realistic when we looked at it for a half-time person.
Yeah.
But it is. It's specific to the person who was RIFed.
Okay.
And then I think we had talked on May 4th as well. Do we have a clarification? Maureen, we also approved this approval of student fees, and can we assume that the $115,000, that's where we are on that?
Right.
Okay. So we also approved additional student fees in the amount of $115,000. We talked a little bit about class sizes, and do we want to talk a little bit about that tonight? Because we kind of we kind of decided that we would jump in here if we're going to hold off on having any upward class sizes unless it's a case-by-case basis. Am I right on that?
Right. Maybe, yeah. And you know what? It's a good thing to bring that up, yes. Because just to clarify for the community what it means to get possibly one additional child with our class numbers set as our class size guidelines currently set as they are. So when Marie brings up a case-by-case basis, I think it's really important to emphasize that because, you know, one child could mean an additional staff member in this case. So when we're talking about our cost containment measures, it's just important that the community understands how much money that is. Steve, if you want to help me with that so that it's more clear to people, because it's not just saying we have this ideal for class size guidelines, which is important, but in the current climate to understand the consequences of one or two children entering.
Right. For instance, right now, if we have 25 students assigned to a first grade class, you know, that's one section. Now, if we get a 26th child, to split that, you now have two classes of 13, plus you have the additional cost on average, assuming we're going to hire one of our non-tenured teachers back to take that role, that's about a $58,000 cost. I mean, that's the real cost of our current non-tenured teachers. Our average teaching cost is higher than that, but assuming of who would be potentially let go or brought back, it's about $50,000, almost $60,000 for one child, and then you have class sizes now 13. So this year, when that situation came about in second grade at Manning, the board at that point didn't cut the class size and left it at 26 instead of splitting those two classes to 13.
Thank you.
And so an exception effectively was approved to the policy in that specific case.
There is no policy. It's up to the board's got to practice, but it's not actually board policy.
And Dr. Ball, last year, did we not make a decision to just add the student to the class and not split the class?
Right. Due to the fiscal situation, yes.
So I guess as a board, we have decided that we are not going to officially raise class sizes, but we're going to leave them where we have historically had them, but take them on a case-by-case basis. Am I summarizing that correctly?
That's correct. Yeah.
So I know because we did get a lot of people speaking to that at the public forum. So at this point, we would like to keep the class sizes as they are and not raise them. So.
And those numbers, I mean, how long ago were they articulated?
Which numbers?
The
current 25,
yes,
28?
25, 28.
2002.
Or
excuse me, 2006. Prior to that, they were 32 was the number.
So they haven't changed since they were revised downward in Correct. 2006.
Yes.
And then, was that it? Maureen, is there something that I'm missing here with the fee schedule? And that included the revenue enhancements? That's all in the same thing, right? So we're currently at $644-something thousand.
Yes.
Okay. And so tonight, do we want to continue with just thinking that it's May?
Well, just to clarify, if you're telling us that you don't want to raise class sizes, then you've got to take another $67,000 off that.
To hit the target, which right. I think...
Well,
Yes.
Right. But we're going to...
Included in option A was an estimate of enrollment-related savings of an additional 150 in the spreadsheet in option A.
Based on junior high and high school course selection.
Understood.
Right.
Understood.
Not based on elementary class sizes.
Understood. So with 150, and actually we increased some additional fees. As we went through line by line on the fee schedule, we increased some additional stuff, which you indicated probably didn't add up too much. But so let's call it $5,000. Let's call it 120.
I'd be hesitant, yeah, because we have a whole mess load more of people applying for fee waiver right now than ever have in the past. So anticipate any increase might be wiped out by fee waivers.
But for purposes of estimate, because this really is about the estimate of how we're getting to our target. It's 150, 120 is 270, 530 is 800, right?
What was the first number?
150 and 120 is 270.
What was the 150?
150 is enrollment, course selection stuff at the junior high and senior high.
Okay, right.
120 is revenue enhancements. That's 270,000. And then what we approved in cuts was 530,000, or just, I'm going to round it to that, which adds up to 800,000. And our original target to get to 2012 and 13 was 900,000. So we're $100,000 short of our target to get to 2012 and 13. To the best of my knowledge, in terms of other List 1 cuts, the only remaining List 1 cuts that we didn't resolve one way or the other was the conversation around the curriculum director, and I don't know if there's a conversation to resolve around the pool. There probably may not be, but to the best of my knowledge, the only unresolved item on that list was the curriculum director. And the question to be asked is, does anybody, we can deal with that, but does anybody else want to go any further into List 2? I'll start that ball rolling by saying no.
One question, still for Steve. Can you refresh my memory what the class sizes were prior to 2006?
32.
32?
Yep.
For which grades?
For all grades,
32
K-5.
for all grades?
Yes. There was at least the consideration of an aide after this class got over 25 students. And that wasn't guaranteed, and it was a part-time aide, I believe.
Dan, I'll jump in and say, to answer your question, I'll say as well, other than the one item on List 1, I would feel comfortable holding off on the list item 2. Items on List 2. So having said that, is there any other comments on List 2? And having said that, do we want to take a vote on the remaining item on List 1? Anybody have anything on List 2?
I guess the only question I had was about the librarian spot that's vacant due to retirement, and if there was any way to utilize the 3 librarians that are left for the 4 schools rather than fill the position immediately. And if anyone else had any thoughts on that.
I think we had that one. Did we get some information that from the librarian, one of the organizations, about that we would lose something if we didn't have a librarian in each building? Mm-hmm. Am I?
Yes, we did.
What would we lose?
Something to
was
that.
It the grant?
Well,
grant?
it was. Well, I think it had more to do with the state of, the state of the art kind of place we're finally in with our libraries, and
you know, Mrs. Hool has kind of taken us through that, and then we received a letter from Mrs. Hool, and then she supported her argument with something from, I can't remember the name of the organization, Steve,
I believe you also got a letter from the Metropolitan Library
That's
System.
what it is, Metropolitan Library, that's what it was.
Suggesting that,
I mean, the librarians deal with the student body every single day. I can't imagine how this would be possible, so I can't support having 3 librarians for 4 schools.
You're also a technology a point person inside the building for the students as well, and so I just...
well, that's it. They're library media specialists is what they're called, so yeah, that's integral.
So if we did not touch list 2, then we would, in essence, have a certified librarian in each building. We would
That's correct.
We would replace Mrs. Hool. Well, we could never replace Mrs. Hool. Okay, so other than that, shall we leave list 2 alone at this point?
I'd like to.
Kathy?
Okay, so then we are not making any of the cuts on list 2 then?
Well, except for the few that were included, which was the grounds position. We already approved those.
Yeah, the stuff that was improved at
Right, the stuff
inside the
that-
530.
And cell phone issue and snowball.
Okay, then let's, so we will go back and take a vote on the curriculum director, whether to, I think we left it as a full position or eliminate the position.
There was also discussion about part-time.
Right.
Yeah, just in fairness, I mean, if anybody else, you know, wants to carry on the conversation, as it were, if anybody else has anything to say.
I don't know what else to say, but I can't say nothing.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like we have, you know, clearly a financial crisis on our hands, but I am also concerned about a crisis in terms of personnel in the district. We're losing a chunk of our administrative team. You know, who is going to keep everything together? You know, I fear this as a parent of a student in the district. I do. I have to be, you know, honest. And if I had some guarantee that the work was going to get done by other people, I could entertain this idea of not having a curriculum director. But I've yet to see how the work is going to get done, except for people hoping that the work will get done by other people. To me, it's a critical role. It has nothing to do with the person in the position right now. Although I think she's done an excellent job. But that's not, you know, my argument for any of these kind of things. I try to separate it from the person and think about what the district needs for the long term. And to let this, the work that's done by a curriculum director just kind of float and hope that it stays grounded and, you know, much less progresses. I don't see it happening. And if anybody convinced me, like I said, that it will happen, I'd love to hear it. But, you know, I've said all along, our administrative staff is pretty bare bones. They don't have assistants, and we don't have assistant superintendents doing things in this district. And, you know, everybody's got a lot on their plate. And to put this big of a job on the principals, I think, is just going to make it kind of disparate again. It's going to make things kind of disjointed.
Well, I'll say that I was happy to see the resumes that we have for interim superintendents, that a number of people do have curriculum experience. So if this is something that the board chooses, we could, you know, hopefully tap into that, and that also could be a criteria that we could look at when we go to hire a permanent superintendent.
Right, but that's great, but that person I mean, the role of a superintendent's a full-time job.
Oh, sure.
So
sure.
To think that they'd have, you know, enough time to do another full-time job, which is what curriculum direction has been, I think is a stretch.
And I basically, you know, echo what Linda has said, as I'm not going to repeat. And you all know how I feel strongly about that as well. And those are my concerns with the interim. Sure, we could look for someone who has that experience, but that person is going to be spending so much time with all the other responsibilities and just getting to learn all the needs in the district that are going to be taking that person's priority, that I'm just fearful that the curriculum aspect is going to fall way down on the priority list. And it is a very important job, and I just, as Linda had said, you know, with the personnel that's leaving, and I'm just afraid too that with all these changes that are going on, that is just such an important aspect that does directly reflect and impact our students. I just really don't want to see that have a negative impact on our students. I have really strong concerns about that.
And, you know, just to 30-second recapitulate for me, as the accounting and finance guy, you know, who is keenly aware of the fact that even no matter what we do, we will, at best, run out of money in 3 years. At worst, sooner. And additionally, in terms of the job, you know, it's as I view it, it's a binary decision. I don't think there's a halfway solution. The district should have a curriculum director, and when we get to this question of fixing our long-term finances, one of the first things that, as we hopefully craft a solution to that, one of the first things that we need to buy back is a curriculum director.
Any other comments?
I think there is an importance to the curriculum director. I think there's a best practice there that makes that need. But I can't say that without saying that there's a fiscal responsibility, and if it's an all or nothing kind of moment. I'm leaning to the nothing for now, but with the same sort of caveat that we need to have that drive to get this back. This can't be a permanent decision.
And there's nowhere else where we can cut this money. I mean, I listen to what you guys are saying, and I think about the things that you've made priorities over a curriculum director. And I just have to say that, you know, it concerns me that other things were given greater priority than this. Well, when you know, we are responsible for the quality of education that we offer in this district.
I would almost like to bring up revisiting reducing the certified nurse position. I mean, to me, that has less of a direct impact on student academics than getting than eliminating the curriculum director position.
Well, I think we, unless we voted on that one, and the only reason this is here is because we asked to have it tabled. So that's right. The only reason why this one item is still on the table.
I know, so, but could we bring that back up for
I don't think
discussion?
It's really fair to yo-yo people in positions. You know, we kind of made a decision on it, and I don't think it's really the right thing to do to then revisit this year.
Right, but we're talking about finances here, and we're talking about, you know, what's going to most impact students. And I feel, and again, I'm now looking at this as positions and not people. So I really, you know, do not want to try to offend anyone. But if we're looking at what's going to more directly affect students, I really believe that the role of a curriculum director is more directly impacting on students than...
And I guess I would take the opposite point of view, that the curriculum director should be a very important resource for the teaching staff, and that the nurse probably interacts more directly with the students. But it's a matter of how you look at it, I know. And I guess, these are very difficult positions to be put in, and nobody likes where we're at. And when I think back to the original, cost cutting that started with South School, that was, I guess, kind of the start of this whole process of looking at how are we going to fiscally be responsible over the coming years. And so the decision was made to close the school and then also at the same time create this position for purposes the board felt were important.
Right, because we were trying to align the curriculum, and
I think a lot of that work has
strides.
Right.
But in order to keep, things cohesive and in place the way that it's supposed to be, and to keep moving in that direction, that's the fact that it's happened, I think, shows the value and how important that position is.
And if I can just interject, we got a lot of criticism about the success of our students, the success of our academic program, especially in relation to neighboring districts. And, clearly there has been market improvement. And, that didn't just happen. That's because of leadership. That's because we decided as a board that this was important and this had to happen, and we put things in place to make it happen. And and the data is now in, and it's showing that it worked. So I don't know how we can turn our backs on that. But again, I guess we're at this point of voting, and I just want to say one more time that it's very disappointing to me that this is not a clear priority for everybody sitting on the board. And I truly, truly fear what is going to happen as a result of this. I mean, people say, well, I don't even know who the curriculum director is. I never see her or him. I mean, that's not what it's about. That is not what it's about. That doesn't mean the work isn't getting done. And we've gotten numerous reports about what has happened as a result of having leadership in the area of curriculum. And I know everybody doesn't necessarily pay attention to those kinds of things, but I guess I can't really add anything else to that. I'm sorry that I haven't been able to convince you guys to vote for this. I really am. I feel like it's a huge failure.
Any other comments?
And with regards to the certified nurse, the person wouldn't actually be losing their job. Is that true? We would still need a nurse.
Yes. I mean, the person would be offered a part-time position in a certified role and could potentially take a non-certified role if they chose to. I mean, I guess the only thing to say from a superintendent standpoint, if you're not looking at people and you're simply looking at positions, I think if you spoke to 100 superintendents, 100 of them would tell you the curriculum director is going to have much more long-term impact on the students than having a certified nurse as opposed to 2 registered nurses.
Okay, shall we vote? Kathy, do you want to start?
So the question being called is whether or not to eliminate the position of curriculum director.
Thank you for clarifying that. Kathy, do you say yes or no on eliminating the curriculum director?
Eliminating the curriculum?
Eliminating the curriculum director.
No.
No. Linda?
No.
Joel?
Yes.
I vote yes. Dan?
Yes.
Diane?
Yes.
Kathy?
No.
So the vote is for yes for eliminating the curriculum director position. So then we...
Is it the sense that there should be a formal motion to approve that? Or was the, I mean, does that count? I don't want to lose that conversation, you know?
You should have a, if you're going to eliminate a position,
Okay.
you should have a...
Well, then, for sake of this meeting, then, I will move that we approve the elimination of the curriculum director position. And Marie, we may as well do this as a roll call vote because
Yes.
it's split.
Second.
Second, okay. And roll call, Mrs. McMahon?
Ms. Casey?
No.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Kelly?
No.
Mrs. Lubeck?
No.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Okay, so the motion carries. So that, then that, after reviewing what we have looked at on list 1 and list 2, then we're at about 866,000, very close to the 900,000 that we were aiming for. And the rest of the positions will remain. Okay.
I think, it's fair and appropriate and important to say out loud at this point that I think we're done with conversations about budget cuts for the next, for formulating the budget for the coming school year, unless or until we can put together. Yeah, I'm
I thought
sorry.
you said we were 100,000 short.
100 before the vote on the curriculum director.
So the rest of the money is okay to be short of?
We are short. Do you, what part of list 2 do you want to go to?
Well, then why can't we be twice as short? I mean,
Because twice as short would be very bad, in my opinion, but that's just...
But with a budget as big as our school district, that we could do this in good conscience?
It's a question of running out of money in 2012 and 13 or running out of money in 2011-12. At 866, my guess is that the model comes really, really close to being right there.
I would just like to...
Saying that you can justify that.
I could reiterate...
Now we're done cutting, now that we did that.
Well, we could save another 46,000 if we bring back to vote the certified nurse position, and then we could be at the 100,000.
I'm not in favor of bringing it back for the reasons I've already stated. I
Wouldn't
think
that
it's
be a
blatantly,
compromise, though?
No, because I think it's
No?
blatantly unfair to yo-yo people around like that. I don't agree with that type of employment practice.
But it was okay to do it for the
To do with the
curriculum
fact
director.
that this
Curriculum director was
position is a
tabled, I
union
think.
position.
Technically, to bring back a vote, somebody from the majority has to ask for that vote to be brought back. So if somebody from the majority wanted to bring that vote back, it can. Technically.
Can't anybody from the board ask to have that brought back?
If there's a vote taken, which we were doing when we were doing this, that's technical, so we...
But that really wasn't a vote because we had to go and approve all of the budget cuts at the next meeting because what we did at the table with that first meeting was not right. And that's why we went and approved it at the last meeting, at our special board meeting.
Right, and the nurse position is not...
That was not even discussed at the last meeting.
Right, it's
the
not...
nurse position. So there was really, technically, there was not a vote, a legal vote, a motion vote taken on the nurse.
Well, we went down the line and said yay or nay to
Joel,
it.
I'm just telling you that there was no motion at that meeting for all of the cuts that we voted on.
Well, there's no motion on the table to not cut all the other line items on list 2.
Well, right, because those were just suggestions given to us.
But you're suggesting effectively to have a motion to not cut something
No, I think the motion was to bring it forward and to
Well, except that-
full-time certified.
Well, I mean, should you bring every line item forward?
Well, we did it in a package at the special meeting.
Except we didn't do a whole bunch of list 2 stuff. There was a lot of stuff we didn't do. No, I mean, there was just a lot of stuff that we didn't touch.
Understand that.
You know, and I don't understand the motion in the negative is what I'm suggesting.
Asking for a motion in the negative.
But I guess all I'm saying is that we didn't meet our $100,000 that we're short. Not looking at people and looking at the finances, which is exactly what you said we needed to do just 10 minutes ago. I'm looking at this sheet, and it says if we replace the certified nurse position with 2 RNs, we could save $46,000. And that just makes financial, fiscal, responsible sense to me, which is what I just heard this board say they wanted to do, and that's why you voted to eliminate the curriculum director position.
I guess I don't understand why we're stopping before that $100,000 mark. I mean, that's really curious to me. Like this happened and now we're done, and why we aren't looking at other things so that we meet that $100,000 mark. It seems very
That's why we started
subjective.
the conversation with what else on list 2 do you want to look at?
Well, I'm asking to have
everybody has
the certified nurse brought back for consideration.
Okay, but I mean, we had asked that question before we engaged the curriculum director conversation, right? I asked that question about list 2 before we engaged the curriculum director conversation.
And I brought it up at that time as well.
We are at 866 for discussion's sake. We're not 100,000 away from 900. We're at 866,000.
Well, now we are.
Now
but
we
we're
are.
still short. We're not at the 900 or whatever that Dan said that we should be at.
Well, I guess I'll reiterate and say that I know I asked if anyone wanted to discuss anything else on list 2. There's a number of things we didn't discuss on list 2. We have on there eliminate the technology director. That's on the list. We didn't discuss that. We didn't discuss eliminating the dean position. I think because that was the question. Do we want to touch any of those questions?
But I'm asking for the certified nurse position to be brought back up.
No, we already covered it pretty extensively. I hate to redo all those numbers again, but I question the $46,000 savings, and that does not just replacing the certified nurse. That's eliminating 2 secretary positions as well. So we already made a decision on it. I don't think we should go back on what we've already publicly taken off the table.
Because as I recall it, we sat at length and discussed what should go on list 1, and we agreed on what should go on list 1. We went certain items we were all in agreement on, and then there were certain items that we took individual votes as to what stays on list 1, so that on May 4th we did finalize that vote, and we all agreed that list 1 contained all of the items line by line that we had discussed previous to that on April 27th. So we had made a decision by vote not to put that position on the list to be cut. So then when we voted for the $529,000, it was the things that were on that list were the things that we all discussed at length. So there were a number of other items that we discussed at length that didn't go on to list 1, but we voted to not include that position on list 1. So in essence, we voted not to cut that position. Am I
I think we discussed that position separately. So basically what you're saying is all of you don't want to reconsider that one. Is essentially what you're saying.
No,
That's what I'm saying.
I think we discussed that we voted on that specific. I could look back at my notes. We voted.
Correct. We did vote on that.
Put that on the list.
No, we voted on that one separately.
Right. And there were a number of other things that we voted on, whether to, one of the votes that we took, as a matter of fact, was in terms of the stipends, and we voted for half.
We really don't have to go and talk about this really long. Let me just ask, you don't want to reconsider that, Marie? Is that what you're saying?
Do I not want to?
Yeah, you don't want to.
Personally?
Right.
No, I don't.
Okay. Dan, do you want to reconsider that?
No. I mean, and just to make a quick statement, we're $34,000 short of the $900,000 target. The PMA model on option A had a balance in 2012 and 13, an ending, a low point balance of about $375,000. At $34,000 short times 3, that means we're $100,000 short of our target, which means that the PMA model, theoretically, if nothing else changed, the PMA model would kick out a number that says that we have a low point balance in 2012 and 13 of $274,000. And I think that ultimately was my goal, to not run out of money by 2012 and 13. So the short answer to the question is no, I don't want to revisit any of these conversations at this point. I want to be done.
Okay. Diane, do you want to reconsider that?
No.
Okay. All right.
So we are, any of the positions that are on that second list, we are not cutting at this time. We will revisit cuts in the future.
It's where I think it's important to say that there is a next step, and it's got to be community involvement in a larger finance conversation about the long-term viability of the district's revenue and expense streams. Shortly and very shortly, we need to talk about creating that committee, having people from the community participate in that committee, and creating a plan to get back to a balanced budget. Because as is, we're simply going to bleed.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is the adoption of the tentative 2009-2010 amended budget that is in our orange folder. Maureen, do you want to touch on that?
This was also posted on the website for anybody who is interested in all of the numbers. Basically, I'm not going to read the entire thing to you, but school code requires that I amend the budget if I know that revenues and expenditures are going to be grossly different from what I originally anticipated. So that's why I've gotten into the habit of doing this every spring. And I'd like to start the discussion by mentioning that this was done at home by me on maternity leave, on bed rest, so absolutely earlier than I'm used to doing, and many of the numbers were not as accurate as I'd like them to be. It was earlier. We didn't have final numbers from the state, the feds yet, so there were a whole lot of changes in this budget as opposed to other years. Basically on page 4 begins a little kind of narrative of all of the amendments, and really a majority of the amendments were due to mostly the IDEA era grant, and we made some major changes from the beginning of the year for what we thought we could spend the money on as opposed to what we ended up spending it on. As you know, we've got prior approval on both of the playground projects to spend those out of the era grant. Originally, we had anticipated doing smart boards for the entire district, and then that got denied by the state. So there were some major changes in what we anticipated spending the money on and where we ended up. Originally, we were awarded $365,000 for that grant. What sits in the budget right now is $209,000 to be spent this year, and the remainder will be spent next year. So a lot of the changes that you see on this amended budget are really coincide with those changes to that specific grant.
Say those again. So we're going to spend how much of that this year?
$209,000.
290.
As opposed to $365 at the beginning of the year.
Okay. Thank you.
I've also cut out, if you'll see under the salaries line item, I've cut out the summer school salaries and a couple of other items. Another thing that I allow the principals to do is to do budget transfers for, you know, smaller insignificant amounts throughout the year. So they have done those throughout this year, so I obviously didn't outline those, and those are just moves from, you know, supplies to purchase services, things like that. So, you know, it could be $100 here, $100 there. So that's why you'll see that these numbers don't perfectly coincide with the total of changes in each category. So unless there are questions.
Just on the state revenue side, in this budget, how much of the state revenue that we have continued to budget have we?
I continue to budget what the reimbursement is.
Okay.
And what the grant award is.
Okay.
So even though I anticipate we won't receive all of those payments in this year, I continue to budget on that basis.
Okay, and they owe us how much? 376 was the last number I remember you saying.
Yeah, and I don't have an updated number. I haven't balanced the books for last month yet.
They owe us something approaching $400,000.
Correct.
So if we don't get that this year, this amended budget says that we'll have an operating fund deficit of $325,839. If in fact they don't get us that money this year, the actual number will come in.
But recall that you've still got the payments from last year that you received this year. So
does
theoretically, a lot of those things cancel each other out.
Does the 325 reflect the capture of last year's cash or no?
Yes.
It does. Okay, but if we don't get the money that we're vouchered,
still have 2 payments from last year and likely 2 payments from this year. So your budget numbers will probably come in less, but not, you know, to the tune of $400,000.
Okay.
Right? And you should be aware that the PMA model used to anticipate getting 3 of the 4 payments in the current fiscal year. They've even adjusted their model now to accommodate that so that you will only receive, you know, you'll receive 2 and 2. So that the 2013 year where the balances are getting very low, they've already accommodated that in the cash part of their model.
Yeah.
Maureen, can I ask a question? Just, you had talked about this under capital outlay, the 4th one. You said a decrease due to the removal of laptop and smartboard purchases district-wide. Is that, are we, you touched on that before, so we are getting...
Allowed to do the smart boards in either full-out special ed classrooms or co-taught classrooms. So and Nancy left. I believe we have 10 that we're going to put in at the junior high. Mike, does that sound right? And 9 at the high school, or the other way around? Somebody, 10, okay. Do I hear a 10?
And at the junior high and
I believe it's 9 at the high school. It might be 7 or 9. So we've moved that into the grant as opposed to our original plan was to buy them for all of the classrooms. So we're not able to do that.
Okay, so, and this money, the reason it's going into these particular classrooms is because...
They're co-taught special ed classrooms.
Co-taught special ed.
The IDEA era money can only be spent on special education expenditures.
Okay. Thank you.
But the state denied us.
The state denied us.
Actually, to be accurate, SASA denied us.
SASA denied us.
Okay.
SASA gets audited by the state.
Okay.
But
And different people have different opinions on what you could do with the money at a state level, but SASA's opinion is, you know, they're our administrative agent, so they're who we're working with.
we did get some.
Excuse me?
We got some out of Title I money and
we
then
got some
for
boards.
specific classrooms that have a special ed.
Well, that's...
And we were able to fund some through the Title I era grant for Miller only. So.
Right, okay. Well, that's great.
So ironically, all those changes, and I know they're in the, you know, tens of hundreds of thousands of dollars, ironically, the only change that actually happens to the operating funds, and this was about the same as last year, was a $44,000 difference in the deficit. So we went from 381 to 325. So we're actually a little better off than I anticipated we would be. So moving forward, I guess, when we're looking at the 2013 date, that should provide you a slight cushion. And again, I don't feel that $275,000 is enough of a cushion when I'm sitting here at May 31st. But just so that you know, this provides you a little bit of cushion over that number.
As a practical matter, I view it I viewed what we caught largely as just this function of capital money we didn't spend because we got denied. And, obviously there was a big savings in the supplies number. So I don't know that I consider it an operating savings, but it is cash savings. So.
Okay, any other questions on the? Okay, so I move approval of the tentative amended budget for the fiscal year 2009-2010 as presented, and that said budget will be available for public inspection in the district's business office from May 12, 2010 until board adoption on Tuesday, June 15, 2010.
And it's actually on the website, so you don't have to come in the district office if you don't want, but you're more than welcome to.
Okay.
So moved.
Second.
Roll call, Mrs. McMahon?
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes.
Ms. Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes. The next item is approval of student tour request. Questions? The chair will entertain a motion to approve the student tour request submitted by the Westmont High School for participation at the state bass fishing competition as presented.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. And the last thing, board reports. Do we have anything from the Finance Committee?
Under other, I just wanted to reiterate what Dr. Ball had said about the junior high reading event that they had at Barnes & Noble. I thought it was, I attended, and I thought it was a great opportunity, a great moment for the junior high. Thanks to all that put that together.
Do we want to do the junior high renaming? Do you guys want to do that? First of all, on your way up here, thank you, both of you, for leading that committee, that board committee, and for all of the people who have spent the time working on that committee as well.
Thank you. Okay. First, we'd like to thank the board for giving us the opportunity to
Can you
present
state your
the
name
report.
first, please?
Sorry, Mark Forsley.
I'm Jill Sternard.
And we'd like to thank the board and Dr. Ball for giving us the opportunity to present the report. And we'd like to thank the committee that was with us. We had some really good discussions, and again, it was just a great time working together with the 20 people that we had, and I think we've come up with a very good report for the board. Just to give you some background again, back in October, I came to present to the board about rechanging the name of Westmont Junior High to Keith Becker Junior High. And there was quite a bit of discussion, and we thank the board for allowing us to have the committee. So the committee was formed, and we had some financial numbers that we went through. And I just want to go through that first, because that was a big factor, is the financial aspect for all of you today is so difficult. So going through that, we broke it down into 4 categories. We said there's an initial cost to changing the name. We said there's a cost to spread out that you can spread out over time. A cost the district's going to incur, whether you change the name or not, is, I call it cost of doing business. So, and the final one is a cost that the district is not going to incur at all. And so when we broke it down, and you have the report, I believe, so I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but I will break down the total package. We said the initial cost would be changing the signs, the parking lot sign, the banner, things like that. The total cost is $58.75, just under $6,000. We said the cost that we'd have to spread out over time, which would include the Westmont Junior High carpets, the murals, things of that nature, that cost would be about $3,500. The cost that we said would cost of doing business, and we have the listing of that, it totals $21,750, and that was included like uniforms. Whether we change the name or not, uniforms are purchased on a cycle every 5 to 6 years. So if you don't change the name, we're still going to be purchasing uniforms for sports and things of that nature. And then finally, there's that was $21,750, and then no cost The athletic banners, we don't pay for the athletic banners, so that was $1,100 cost. That was in their consultant fee for $750. And so we took some of those out, and that came out to $5,400. So we felt the actual cost to change the name would be just under $10,000. And so based on that, we had a very good discussion. I was very impressed with the ideas that the board, and I know Mrs. Stenard and I sat there, and it was just a great discussion of some suggestions. But what we decided, and I'm going to have her talk, but what we decided is due to the current budget shortfalls and things, we couldn't go out and ask the community for any money towards changing the name. We don't think this is the right time. But we'd like you to use this report as a tool for future, hopefully the finances become better, and then use this report as a tool to follow and maybe tweak a little bit as you go further with it, if that is something that the board desires, or members like myself or somebody comes back later to present. And we use this only as a tool. But once we came to that conclusion, then the idea is, because everybody was on board with recognizing Mr. Becker, and it's really, for me, it was really a fond memory down memory lane as people spoke about him, and everybody was on board of doing something. So I'll let Mrs. Stenard speak now of what we decided to go with.
Yeah. It was probably about our third meeting when we realized, this was really something that needed to be tabled, because it was just, too much money, whether initial cost, overtime, whatever, just too much money, obviously, to go any further with. So given that, and everyone agreed to that, we decided, we need to brainstorm, because there was a lot of energy and passion, especially among a lot of the staff at the junior high, to do something. And so what were some of those ideas? So it was a really great discussion and really good ideas that came out of that. And I guess the two that really, bubbled up and that are here in the report are a suggestion is to rename the Commons at the junior high to Becker Commons. Obviously, it's a gathering place for students. It's where the graduation celebration is held. It's also where the graduation reception is held. And so we thought that would be, a fitting tribute to rename the Commons. So that's one of the suggestions. And we're bringing this here to you first, as a suggestion. And then obviously there needs to be more discussion with Mr. Fiala and the staff at the junior high to make sure that they all support it, to even move forward. And then the next suggestion that came up would be to name or rename the section of Black Hawk Drive from Chestnut to Oakwood, and rename that as Honorary Keith Becker Way. And I know as you drive around town, there are several streets around town that have that designation, honorary. I think there's a Muddy Waters, and there's, a few others, I think. So that would be some signage that, could be secured. And our committee thought that those were two fitting ways to honor Mr. Becker in light of, the financial situation. We also have at the back, if this is ever, brought up again, and I think that our committee was all pretty happy with our, alternate suggestions, but if it's ever, brought up again, obviously the process would need to be redone, because costs are going to be different at that time. And I guess even the bigger picture is to make sure we have all the community input. Is this really something that, we want to do? And at that time, is it the right thing to do? All of that. And so we have some suggestions in the back of how we could go about doing that. But that is a really critical key piece of this whole thing that we didn't do, because we decided as a group we were tabling it. So it seemed silly to go out and get input at this time when it was something we were going to table. So, but that would be definitely something that would need to be done if it were ever to be brought up again. So.
And then with regard to rechanging the name, we would have to go to the village board, and I know a few people on there. So, but we wanted to get your permission first before we would present it at a village board meeting. So if that's something that this board is in agreement with, of rechanging the name, we can go to the village board and ask, and they'll go through that process. Like you said, there's a number of streets we've approved that have the name changed, or it's honorary. It's not really changed, but it's honorary.
It's really an additional sign.
Additional sign.
It would still be Oakwood Drive, and then underneath, you can picture those brown signs.
Yeah. So we would just need your approval to do that.
So I guess what's in front of us is specifically the first part. We would need to talk to Mr. Fiala and about that piece. So we're not looking to do that right now. But I guess what we have in front of us is, do we want to look at this report from this committee and discuss section number 2 here, renaming that, bringing it before the village?
And we did talk to Mr. Fiala, and we've talked to the staff already. we gave them the suggestions. There was really not a lot of feedback. The ideas were, the comments were, yes, those are very good ideas, but nothing was really moving forward because they knew we had to talk to you first.
Or voted on, or approved, or
We weren't
anything
quite sure
like
that process.
So, yeah.
So you're recommending both items, to rename the commons and then to do the honorary sign?
Yes.
And in here, it says that money for the plaque or mural from the first one would come from private donations, as well as any cost paid to renaming the street would also be through private donations. So you're not looking to the board for any money. Okay. So question, do we want to discuss this, particularly number 2 then, which is?
I'll just say, A, thank you very much. B, I would be very supportive of you continuing the conversation on your first recommendation with the staff at the junior high. And then secondly, in terms of empowering the committee to approach the village on renaming that section of Oakwood to honorary Keith Becker Way, I'm all for that as well.
I would agree.
I'm sorry, Diane?
I would agree.
I'll agree with that.
I'm fine with that.
I would agree too. So it sounds like we're good.
We'll take to the next step.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you
very much. And then there is a revision in our packet about a board policy.
Oh, Marie, are we on the board
I'm sorry.
reports?
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay. Yes. I just have a few items that I wanted to share with the board and the few members of the audience that are remaining. I attended Super State on Friday afternoon with the band students, and Mr. Sarr was there and some of our other staff. I just wanted to share with everyone and remind them what a rigorous application process that is for our band students, and just let them know that our students performed wonderfully. You would be very proud of them. The process, again, is that they submit a recording of their performances, and judges from around the country actually listen to the recordings and decide. About 10% of the applicants actually get to perform at state. And Mr. Bufus said that in our case, in the division that they applied in, there were 30 bands, and out of the 33 bands were selected to perform this time. And we were one of the 3. So our students did a fabulous job, and again, we should be really proud of them. I also wanted to mention that at the back of the, on the table there in the auditorium, I put some Race to the Flag flyers. The high school and the junior high are going to possibly be having some cross-country teams that are going to start out the event. It is on May 30th at 7:15 a.m. and 7:45 is when the adults are going to be running and walking. It is actually a certified race, 5K race, and it is going to be benefiting St. Jude. And I just wanted to let you know that the flyers are there and that we have a website this year as well. It's www.racetotheflag.org. You can actually register online. And again, we're expecting about 200 to 300 runners and walkers, and the committee, in conjunction with the National Honor Society students, the high school, and the village, have been working really hard for about 2 to 3 months now on this event. So it should be really wonderful, and just pray for good weather, because we haven't had good weather the last few years.
Kathy, that's May 30th?
May 30th.
Memorial Day weekend?
Memorial Day weekend, yes. And I also want to mention that we're going to be starting the race at Ty Park, and we'll be running through Oakwood subdivision. That's different this year, so it should be a lot of fun. Also, I want to thank the high school staff. They collected over 350 granola bars for the race, so that we will have bars for the participants at the end of the race. And we've had donations of water, and also the Lions Club is going to be having a pancake breakfast that morning as well. So there's a lot of festivities that'll be going on that morning, so we look forward to having everybody join us. Thank you.
Thank you. That was 7:15 a.m.? 7:15 a.m.?
7:15 a.m. is the cross-country, and then 7:45 are the adult runners. Thank you.
Okay, then there is something, there's in our board policy, a revision of board policy to limit attorney costs?
Yes, I believe that it's become necessary for the entire board to become involved and be held accountable for the legal fees that are being incurred with this board. And especially in light of the recent bill from March, there are some items on there that I don't even know what they pertain to. And I think the board should be privy to everything that's going on.
So is this for our review to vote on at the next meeting, or is the recommendation to vote on this now? Or does this go to policy? How does this work?
Well, I guess that is one thing I looked at when I saw this in the board book. I mean, clearly, our policy development policy says that these things should be brought to the policy committee for consideration, and the policy committee then brings it to the whole board. And so I guess I'm a little bit confused as to why an official-looking policy even showed up here, since we have a process that's very well defined for this activity. Other than that, just some notes about the money. I haven't seen what you're looking at, so I don't know exactly which fees you're questioning, but according to Maureen's last finance report, the tort fund is running as projected and comparable to the last 3 years. So I don't see...
The legal fees are not paid out of the tort fund. They're paid out of the ed fund.
I'm sorry, which?
Legal fees are not paid out of the tort fund. They're paid out of the education fund.
Oh, sorry. Okay, so I'll correct that one. But the legal costs fluctuate greatly based on what's going on at any given moment in the district, and we've had a lot of personnel questions that really were appropriate for the board president to consult with our attorneys over. And if the purpose is to reduce fees, and that's our main purpose here, then I wonder if we are going to consider putting limitations on administrative use of counsel as well. And, I remember last year I suggested, as part of a policy revision from the policy committee, that we put some sort of spending cap beyond which, for purchases, beyond which the board would, the administration would need approval from the board to proceed with. And I think some of the comments were we wouldn't want to tie administration's hands on these issues or hamper responsiveness. And I think those two reasons also apply to trying to limit the board's contact with attorneys.
Joel, I would like to know what's going on when we're contacting the attorneys. This entire board is not aware of what is going on.
Well, I don't have like I said, I don't have what you're looking at, but I would imagine some of those conversations would be appropriate for closed session.
That is accurate.
I think what I'm hearing is that the intention of the policy revision is so that the whole board has information about why counsel is being contacted instead of after the fact. That's kind of what I get out of it. It doesn't, to me, it doesn't necessarily say that it's going to limit the president's ability to contact council as much as a desire to have the whole board be part of that decision-making. I think it's fairly...
Personally, I'd like to see this come through the policy committee, but secondarily, at the risk of committing the sin of candor, I don't think that the legal issue, the legal fees are the real issue here. I think the question, because we're set up essentially where the board president works with our council when the board has issues to work through with council that for whatever reason don't have an administrator involved. Having said that, again, I don't think the legal fees are the real issue here. So in that context, other than visiting the question of this particular policy, I'd suggest that at a certain point several meetings ago, we raised the question of visiting the question of board officerships. And so I'll suggest that creating a voluntary mechanism annually between our organizational meetings to visit the question of board officerships, again, is something that is probably a good idea for a lot of reasons. But and without going into an argument about the merits or the lack of merit of this particular revision, I'd like to see, rather than deal with this revision now, have it go through the policy committee, as well as the question of dealing with board officerships more frequently, if the board so desires, than at the organizational meetings.
I would agree. I would agree with letting this go through the policy committee. However, I do think it's an appropriate conversation at this point, because some of the recent legal fees in a very short period of time have equaled some of the cuts that were very painful for us to make on our list of cost containments. And so if this trend were to continue, I could see it being a big financial issue. So I do think it's appropriate, but I agree that going through the policy committee is not a bad way to address it.
Any other comments? I'd like to make a comment. Since this was in our board packet, I kind of put a couple thoughts together. When I was elected into office and seated as a board member, I took an oath that in part stated that I shall respect taxpayer interests by serving as a faithful protector of the school district's assets. That has not changed over this past year. In the past, I also believe that we as a board need to consider the unusual circumstances that this board has been facing over the past few months. A board president must always be conscious of incurring legal fees on behalf of the board. And to that extent, I absolutely see that as we move forward, these costs will not be in the same vein as they have been over the past couple of months. And I also would say that in terms of looking at the policy committee, would need to consider the impact of requiring the board to approve all board president contacts with the school attorney, because it would weigh heavily on the ability to act promptly in time-sensitive situations. And it would require either waiting until a regularly scheduled meeting for the board to consider approving the contact, or will require the board to schedule a special meeting so that we could comply with the Open Meetings Act. Other than that, I would say that if we're going to move this to the policy committee,
you know what, and I don't get the impression it would require a vote. That's not what I get. Maybe like if it, normally you'd think a question would come out of a board meeting. I think that's kind of what I would hope to see happen, is that, the board directs the president to seek counsel because we see a reason for it. Simple questions usually can be asked of the administration without a call to counsel for timely kinds of things. Otherwise, a quick phone call could make it happen pretty quickly. I don't think it would ever require a special meeting or a vote at a regularly scheduled board meeting. I think that, I don't think that it's that complicated, this suggestion, but.
So board policy committee will have a...
Yeah, we'll discuss it.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Then, are there any public comments?
I'm going to make one. Maureen, it has been my pleasure to work with you. We will miss you. Thank you.
I was going to steal the floor earlier and make a similar comment, but you were all rolling along. I just really do want to thank the board and Dr. Ball specifically for your support over the last 6 years, and it really has been a pleasure to serve the students of 201. And I want to just put a plug in for my ladies that I work with in the business office, because without them and their hard work and their dedication, I would not have been able to succeed in this position.
Thank you. Any other public comments? The chair will entertain a motion to enter closed session for the purpose of discussing collective bargaining and confidential personnel issues.
So moved.
Roll call, please.
Mrs. Lubeck?
Yes.
Mr. Price?
Yes.
Mrs. Thomas?
Yes?
Casey?
Yes.
Mr. Charleston?
Yes.
Mrs. Charlton?
Yes.
Ms. Kelly?
Yes.
And there will not be a vote after this. Thank you.